go ahead and start
Uh,
record. So we've got about 30 minutes total.
all right. I assume y'all are able to see this now.
Let's see. There we go. Slide share. Okay, looking good.
All right, cool. Is
So
everybody
Jonathan,
able?
let me introduce you. So Jonathan Miller is one of my former students and graduates here from Del Mar College. Jonathan is a Texan, lived, born, and died here, I'm sure. And he's coming to us from right outside of Austin today. And he's most recently worked for MySQL and Oracle. And he's going to tell you a little bit about that venture and that journey later on. But I'll let him go ahead and take over now.
So, yes, I did. I graduated in December of 1993, cum laude from Del Mar. But wasn't just me, it was the professors at Del Mar. And Philip sticks into my mind for many reasons, but for one of the reasons is when I was first in his class working on a project and frustrated, he said to me, "The wheel already exists. You don't need to invent the wheel. You just need to put a new hubcap on it. Go find the wheel." And that philosophy has carried me through so many things of not trying to reinvent everything and just putting a new hubcap on it. And so I wanted to share that with you. That was impactful. Um, and if I remember right, he also let us do tests with open books because he didn't want us to memorize. He wanted us to figure out how to research and figure out what we needed. And that was, you know, that was huge for me too because we researched. So anyway, I the funny thing is when you graduate with a degree, everyone thinks that's great, and they always want you to come back in 2 years once you have experience. And so trying to get experience to start with is the hard part. And so let me did it let's see. So growing up, I had dyslexia and attention deficit disorder. They kept me back lots of grades. They would stick me in classes with mentally retarded kids. And in high school, I wound up quitting. I was dead. And so I did a whole bunch of jobs. And about age 19, I figured this stuff isn't working. And I went and took a test at the National Guard and I passed the test and they sent me off to basic training. And it was that drill sergeant that discovered I didn't have a high school diploma. When he asked me why, and I told him I was learning disabled, his first question was, "What's 2 plus 2?" And I said, "4." And he goes, "Learning disabled my butt." And so while everyone else got to go to sleep at 9 o'clock at night, I had to go to his office the first week and learn how to take notes and read for the meaning. And then while everybody else got to sleep at 9 o'clock, I had to go take GED classes. But by the end of basic training, I had my GED and I knew how to read for the meaning and I knew how to take notes. And from there, I went to cargo specialist truck driving school in Virginia, graduated top of the class, distinguished graduate. Came back, started working on the NAS as a refueler, defueler, because I had trucking experience for $6 an hour, but told myself there's got to be a better way to make a living. So I started going to Del Mar College. And in the beginning, I just kind of needed the basics. I needed the math, I needed the reading, I needed the English. And I just want to say this real quick. I'm very disheartened that Antonio David died. He was one of the best freaking math teachers in the world. And I made A in trigonometry. And to this day, I probably can't do trigonometry, but I made an A in this class because I could do it back in those days. And it was people like him that really helped me build. And so I'm sorry that he died. Uh, but I think it was the second English class I was going to take because you have to think this was 1990, 91, 92 when computers are just coming out. But this English class required you take Intro to Computers because it was a computer-based class. And so I took Intro to Computers, and that's when I decided that my degree was going to be in computers, and I changed it over to computer programming. And this is when I got to marry people or meet people like Philip and Mary Lou and a whole bunch of other uh, great instructors. And I wound up becoming a computer lab assistant, a tutor, and then I graduated cum laude from Del Mar, moved up to Austin to start my career. And of course, as I was telling y'all, everybody was telling me how great you have a degree, you're cum laude, get 2 years of experience, and come back to see me. So, how do you get a job or how do you get the experience if nobody will hire you? So, I'm going to encourage y'all to find some job, find something that is in the field that you're wanting to do, even if you're doing it for free, so that you get experience, so that when you go out in the real world and start trying to get a job, they're not looking at you going, "Where's your experience?" If you have some passion, go out to GitHub and publish some type of code you've written. Maybe you wrote a game, maybe you wrote a tool, make it a MIT license and let people see your work. So anyway, from there, I got a job as a computer operator finally for a company called Transactive. They're the ones that took the food stamps and put it on a debit card for the state to begin with. They were a subsidiary of GTech, and GTech, I think they still run the lottery, but they ran the lottery in Texas and all around the world. So they basically took their lottery technology and applied it to the uh, food stamps. And from there, I left and went to Omnibase, which if you live in Texas, there's this thing called the Failure to Appear program now, which Omnibase implemented. So if you drove through Corpus Christi and got a ticket and you lived in Austin, back in the day, the only choices they had were to come get you or hope you drove back through their jurisdiction so they could arrest you. Well, with this system, they could now flag your driver's license. So you can't get your driver's license renewed in the state of Texas. Do you take care of that outstanding violation? And this was built, the Omnibase or the Transactive stuff was on big old VAX VMS mainframes. Uh, and what's funny about it now is the cell phone sitting next to you probably had more power than these big old heat producing boxes had. Omnibase, which was a much smaller, it was actually a Windows NT system running Sybase. And then from there, I finally started to get into what was going to turn out to be some programming career by getting a job of Pervasive SQL. And Pervasive SQL was built off of the Btrieve engine, which was a record manager that Novell had bought for millions of dollars. And somehow the people that invented it went to work for Novell. And a few years later, they were able to buy it back for just $1 million. And then they wrapped the SQL part around it, but the Novell operating system still used it. And I started out the first couple of months as what they called the hotfix QA, which meant they had a team that were working on patches for vital customers, and I was to test those patches. But a short while later, um, they needed someone to do the database performance change testing, and I got moved into there and started getting taught how to do that. Um, and then in 2005 was the big rush to move all jobs to India because India was so much cheaper. And in those almost 5 years at Pervasive, I went through 12 layoffs and got caught up in the 13th one. I was the only thing left. I was the 13th one. Um, Number 11 was all the managers and directors laying off everybody else but me. And then they came in the next day and they all got laid off. But because I was a performance engineer and they didn't know exactly what I did or how I did it, they didn't know how to get rid of me. So when they came to lay me off, they gave me a 6 months notice because they wanted me to train the Indian guy and then a bonus too. And of course I accepted it. I mean, what else else are you going to do? And in the end, the only talent this Indian guy had was he was able to get a visa to come over. I'd given him a whole list of what their engineer needs, and I'm not even going to go into the story of asking him if he knew what a RAID 5 was and him shaking his head yes, and me asking him to explain, and he couldn't explain. Um, So anyway, the in that last month, um, I found a job on Craigslist for QA of MySQL because QA was a new thing. Monty, the inventor, had always depended upon the community to be his QA. And as they're forming this into the business, Martin Mikos and others had convinced him that no, MySQL really needed a QA team and people seeing if they could break it before we let other people have it. And so they started developing this QA team in 2005. At the end, I had an offer with a place called Renewed Data, which was up near where Pervasive was. And I was living in Kyle, so that was 90 miles round trip a day. And I also had a job offer by this company called MySQL, which was a work at home job. Now, the drive job paid $10,000 more than what MySQL did, but I was tired of driving and I liked databases better than what the Renewed Data was offering. So I took MySQL. And in my first week, I was flown to California and taught about the NDB cluster, which is another story about Ericsson selling something they probably shouldn't have. And all y'all use it, you don't realize it, but when you're driving down the road and you switch from tower to tower, that's the NDB cluster doing it for you. Um, the and then they were doing global replication with the NDB cluster, which I learned about, and went home, packed my bags, and the next week I was in Prague at the very first developer meeting. With MySQL, MySQL was a remote company before remote even became popular. 99% of the people worked remotely from their houses around the world, which meant that we would meet all around the world for team and developer meetings. And this first week in Prague, I got to meet Monty, who was ranting and raving. And when I asked somebody about who's that, they said, "Oh, don't worry, that's just Monty." And they were trying to get row-based replication into 5.0, which was due out in a few weeks. So they asked me to take a look at it. And within the first week, I had over 40 bugs opened against it, with at least 7 of them being severe bugs. So that's why row-based replication went into 5.1 and not 5.0. But as I was telling your professor, MySQL eventually got bought by Sun Microsystems, and Sun Microsystems got bought uh, by Oracle. Before Sun bought us, the performance team, and there was a performance team that included architect and all this stuff, named Peter. They left him, created a company that y'all may or may not have heard of called Percona. And y'all can look that up. But about that time is when Sun was coming in, and there was the system architect coming in with Clustra DB, which was part of Sun, which those two, us and Clustra, got merged together. This is a guy that is a Ukrainian that lives in Paris. His name is Dmitry. And so they didn't need a performance architect. They had one. What they needed was a performance change team. And since I had previous experience in Pervasive, they asked me if I would move teams to System QA and do performance work. And of course, I jumped on it. But when I went in, they had this shell script that was a little over 10,000 lines. It had no structure in it. It was basically a top-down script. And you had to do a lot of manual work before you even ran the script. It wasn't really automation at its finest, for sure. And they wanted something a little bit more automated fast. And so with some duct tape and some baling wire, some Perl and some Java and some other things, I kind of duct taped it together, but I told them I didn't like it. And at the time, and still the case, there was 2 frameworks called, one was called MySQL Test Run, which was a Perl-based framework and still is. And then there was another one called MySQL Stress, which is a Perl-based framework and still is. So therefore, I convinced the system QA director that all of this needed to be rewritten in a Perl-based framework, and that's where AutoBench 3 came from. And so AutoBench 3, by the end of it, was a full framework from start to finish. In MySQL, there was a build team, there was a farm of build hosts. Through Jenkins, this framework would go out and download whichever daily build that we were pointing at, because we had the trunk branch, we had the 8.4 branch, and this is towards the end. There's an 8.0, there's an 8.4, and there's a 9.0. The 9s, the higher versions, are always the trunk. And so there's these daily builds, which gathers up everything that's been pushed since the last time it was built, along with everything else. And so, this was automation to where it would pull those builds down, it would install those builds, it would init the database, it would start the database, and then it would start running series of tests. And each test gets restart, start fresh. I mean, there's just all the host of options that it could do. Each test case would produce a XML results file. The XML results file would get sent to the parser. The parser would update the results database with it. We had a website that was built on top of this where we could go in and compare results. And for the longest time, as you're creating this stuff, you're kind of eating your own dog food as you're going along. And until you get it really created, it can cost you a lot more work than it actually solves you. If you got tons of results coming in that need to be looked at and gone through, and you don't have a good way to do it, well, it can cost you a lot of time. And so as you come up with these types of solutions, be looking at where these pain points could be, right? You get this all automated, got all these results come in. How are you going to quickly look at it? And my weak point was web development. I hate web development. I don't like web development at all. And I had stolen the what was called the ATRT database and website from the NDB cluster team. It was automated test, run test, database and website. And I renamed it ATR, automated test results. And I had done the best I could with it for a while. And then luckily my manager wanted to play with the web, so he played with it for a while. And then we hired a guy out of Mexico that joined the system QA team that was a really good web guy. And I asked him if he could do something for us like a dashboard. And that's actually what he created. I don't know. Let's see if I can actually find the dashboard real quick. Let's see here. ATR dashboard. They're going to come up good. Can y'all see this? Can you see that, Philip?
We're seeing it.
So this is what he created. This is production for us, right? And right now it's showing commits, but I could show results, and the result was always either the highest or lowest, because a lot of these are scalability tests. It means it had more than one thread count associated with it. But this is when it really took off for us in production, because instead of spending a whole day going through results, we could spend 15 minutes and figure out really where we needed to go and what we needed to do. And from here, we could create change logs and track what we're doing. We reset baselines. So anyway, the way it worked is as these XML files came in, it would update this database with it. And then it would check a baseline table. We had a table of baselines. And if it could match up certain key elements like host, test name, certain criteria, it would automatically do a compare and show up here in this dashboard. And so that's what you're seeing. And then the framework, because you are dealing with daily builds, right? And sometimes we're running weekly, right? So from one week to another, like a lot of the IO bound testing, because they take so long, they have to be weekly. They can't be a daily done thing. And so a lot of times you have hundreds, maybe thousands of commits between the time that you last had a good run and what you're seeing now. And so then you have to figure out, okay, which commit or series of commits is causing this change? And for that, of course, you have to do something which I hope everyone's learning about called a binary search, right? Is you start going through the list of commits from top to bottom. You divide it in half. Are we good? Are we bad? Are we going up? Or are we going down? And what you'll find out is even in thousands of commits, you're probably not going to go over 10 or 12 before you're in the area that you need to be if you're doing a binary search. And so the framework also had the ability to build MySQL. So we could give it a series of commits. So a lot of times I would split the list up in 3 or 4. So I would just split the list up, give it 4 commits, come back in the morning and figure out where I need to go from there. And the other thing is MySQL, which a lot of people don't know, is above the community build, above the free stuff that they give away, everything's PGO, profile guided optimization. And even that is a lot to learn about. So I think I skipped something. Let's see here. Get rid of this. Get rid of that.
Yeah, just a reminder, we have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get through this real quick. Yeah. So anyway, the world's going to artificial intelligence, and Oracle is trying to build an Abilene right now. If you want a job, you can go get a job right now in Abilene, Texas. Believe it. I don't know if you can find a place to live in Abilene, but they own like 100 something acres out there, and they're building 5-acre data centers for this artificial intelligence. But they have basically gutted a lot of products and so forth in order to go after this. And MySQL was one of them. So after almost 21 years of building this, my job was last year I got the highest raise I ever got. This year I got the best review I ever got in July. And in August, I was notified that my position no longer existed. So the one thing that I want to make sure everyone realizes is dedication is a one-way street. They expect you to be dedicated. And you need to be dedicated, but you also need to be sharp. And there's stuff coming out not so well. So one of the things I want to say is Roth. Go open a Roth account today. Whatever you do, put $5 in. I don't care what you do. Get that time clock clicking now. And every way you can figure out how to get some money in that Roth, get it in there and look at ETFs or something else that starts producing income for that you have, and just have it start compiling on itself to the point where if you need to, you can have passive income. But you know, this game is changing and it's changing fast, and you may find yourself in there for 5 or 10 years, and the next thing you know, you're shown the door and the world has changed 1,000,000%. So, get the experience before you try to go get the job the best you can. Once you get the job, start saving your money, open a Roth. Since we're running on time, let's see. Technology. Yep. Artificial intelligence is where it's going. Operating systems, networking, coding, databases, MariaDB. Postgres is becoming the most popular at this point in time. Is starting to overtake MySQL. How much time do we have left? Not
5
much,
minutes.
right?
5 minutes.
So, punctuality, follow through, task completions, written communication, oral communication. But this is one that's always stuck with me. And this is one I was taught when I was in NCO school in the military. And that's lead by example. Don't ever ask anyone something that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself. And if they're not sure, then you lead them. You show them. Lead them by example. And that also goes to, like when I would turn over production, I would turn over production with a very official report. I would lead by example. I would show them what I expected of them. Um, you know, let's see. Listen to understand and not to respond or correct. A lot of times, what you'll find in life is people aren't listening to what you're saying. They're listening to to you long enough for you to be quiet to tell you something. And, really to validate people, they need to be heard. And so, a lot of times if you're just listening to what they're saying before making up your mind or thinking anything, you'd be surprised at what you'll learn about them. Let's see what else is there.
Yeah, I think future proofing is a good title. That's worth talking about.
Yeah, I don't have a bachelor's degree. I was going to move to Austin, get a job, and get my bachelor's degree and have a family and kids. And I moved to Austin and wound up getting married and having kids and trying to go back to school, work, have kids. It didn't work out. And, you know, but to be honest with you, once I started at Pervasive, that was almost 5 years. And then from Pervasive to MySQL with no downtime. Actually, I was officially unemployed for 2 days by choice. But it's almost been 21 years because I actually once I got into doing the performance part and being able to create the framework and set everything up, I loved it. It wasn't work. And that's the other thing that I want to tell y'all. If y'all can really find something that you love to do, it's not work. You'll have problems dragging yourself away from it. It's almost addictive.
What about
So
certifications? Do you find value in those at all?
it's yeah, it's like maybe some Linux certificate. The problem is a lot of these. I have tons of certifications. MySQL sent me for none of them are valid anymore. None of them are worth the paper they're written on.
Right.
And so that's the problem with these certifications. You're getting certified in something that's today, and it's probably not going to be tomorrow. But there's certain other type of certifications, like different QA guidelines and stuff that are seen throughout. A lot of these jobs are asking for those certifications. So those type of certifications I find value in, but not every one.
Yeah, well, you're coming from the software development side as opposed to say hardware network and administration. So
Right, and that's why I'm talking about certifications. So there's certain QA and network uh, certifications that would probably be worth the time if that's the field that you're going down.
right.
So let's see, is there any more slides? Questions and answers.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, you can type them in the chat or just turn off your mute and ask them. So we'll wrap up here with about 3 minutes. Anybody have any questions for Jonathan? Can be anything school related, job related, career related. Hmm. Jonathan, is that your formal dress for the home office?
What's that now?
I said, is that your formal dress for the home office? A t-shirt?
Oh, yeah.
Only way to
Yeah,
go, right?
I don't even have a suit anymore. You know, I mean, I've worked from home for 21 years and,
Yeah, and the kids are
I'm a,
married and gone and all that kind of stuff.
oh yeah, yeah. So,
Hmm.
and working remote isn't that foreign. And so the one thing I would have to say is if you're going to work remote, you need to be disciplined. And it's like, I still get up 5:30 every morning. Every morning I'm up ready to work. But that's because I had part of my team was in India and Norway, right? And
Right,
so I adapted my sleeping and my getting up so that I was awake and available for them before they had the end of their day.
right.
And so, that's the other thing you have to think about is you probably gonna get on a team where you have teammates all around the world.
Okay. Um, and then one last one last thing. What's the future hold for IT employment, you think? Is it gonna go get worse, get better? Is it cyclical?
I think it's this artificial intelligence. You
It's
know,
just
it's
sucking
like
all it's sucking all the oxygen out of the room, right?
well, I think we're in a AI bubble. I think that this whole world thinks that we can just turn this all over to artificial intelligence and it's going to be great. And the truth is I've started using a lot of artificial intelligence with Copilot, and it is very helpful. But I think what artificial intelligence needs to be before it's anything is a tool. And I just think they're looking at this wrong, and I think it's building up a big bubble. And right now, the workforce is flooded with very talented unemployed people.
Yeah,
People that
yeah,
have been employed 20, 25, 30 years that are very talented at what they do, and they can't get looked at
yeah,
because these recruiters open up a job and these recruiters have 15, 2,000 applications coming in at them. And so
yeah,
guess what they're doing? They're using artificial intelligence to go through all these applications. And guess what? If you don't have that bachelor's degree, it's automatic. I can't tell you how many ones that I've applied to that I automatically got an email back saying, "Thanks for applying, but we're not going to consider you. We're moving on."
yeah,
Almost spontaneously.
yeah. It's scary. Do you find any of the professional websites useful, like LinkedIn or GitHub or?
LinkedIn's very, right now seems to be the center of business and where people are going and talking. GitHub is, if you can get something out on GitHub, like I said, I've got 3 projects out on GitHub. I've got what's called TAF Perl, which is Test Automation Framework written in Perl, and it's just a bare bones getting started framework. I've got a CPU monitor in Python that, similar to what we used to use to make sure that the MySQL was at rest before we went on to the next iteration. And another one that I wrapped that there used to be a tool in there is a tool in MySQL called Profile Runner that did both perf and vtune. Just trying to practice on my Python, which I haven't gotten to do a lot. I rewrote it and and Python without the vtune, and it's out there under GitHub. It's called perf runner that helps, because when you're doing profiling, you don't want to you don't want to profile the start of the thread. You want to profile them while they're at a steady state. If you're comparing one commit to another, you need them both in steady state. Picking up
Or
the beginning or the end of an iteration can give you skewed data.
okay. Well, the clock is running down to less than a minute, so I just want to say thank you very much for showing up. All the luck in the world in your semi-retirement, and hope to see you.
It is great to see you, and thanks for inviting me.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye.